Ready to go here then?
Yeah, thanks again, guys. We'll get started. We'll start in this corner here. We'll talk about the reverser and stuff like that. I'll let John. He's doing such a good job. I'll let him carry on.
Okay, thanks, Tim. We're going to start here with this drive belt up in here. This is the DFR. This is where we drive the DFR from the right-hand side of the combine. It is driven from the combine side. It is not driven from the feeder house. So something to keep in mind with this is that when you start the rotors up, it is spinning with it. So it's something to keep in mind in a lot of different scenarios that when you're working with this combine. Right now, we're on the big pulley here, so it is in the low-speed drive, like I showed before. The high-speed drive would be the smaller belt that would go inside here. You would have to actually take the belt off, remove this pulley, and then put the other belt on, and then you'd be in high speed. And the high-speed belt does come with the combine. This cylinder that's right here, this is the reverser for the DFR, or a D-slug, if you will. It is operated from the monitor, so you don't have to get out of the cab to actually de-slug this thing. The way it works is there's a crown gear in behind here, and there's a ratchet assembly on a cylinder, and there's actually a sensor here that can feel the pressure in there. So it'll know when it's unplugged. It can actually feel it through the hydraulics. This is optional. This one was installed at the factory, but you can put this on as a kit after the fact if you say get a machine that was ordered without one.
Model year 2019 and newer.
Yes.
Only. Older units. See, aren't you glad you came, Hugh? So, they had to revamp the drive and stuff for the DFR, and that's why 2019. In 2019, it was the header was already designed, the mounts were already there, and we could put it on. And 2020, we could do it right from the factory. 2019, it was still a dealer installed option.
Yeah, and even today, there's combines that come without it. Whether, it just depends on the market. And if you end up picking up a combine that doesn't have it, it can be added as a kit. But again, like Tim said, model year 19 and newer only. Okay, so going down the side of the feeder house here, just some points and some tips here. This here is our feeder slip clutch. It's a jaw type clutch. The spring sets the tension on it. There is a grease point here. Now it says 200 hours to grease it. Generally, the rule of thumb with this is probably as follows. Give it one shot of grease and then forget about it.
A year or ever?
A year. When you pull it out of the shed, give it a shot of grease.
Just give it one. One, walk away from it, don't touch it for the rest of the year. If you feel there's too much, if you feel that it is getting greasy in here and that you think that maybe it's starting to inhibit the ability for it to work correctly, you can take the nut off, take it apart, take the jaws out, wash everything out in Varsol, put it back together again, give it one shot of grease, walk away from it. Okay? This belt down here, you'll notice it has two tensioners on it. So there's a tensioner here and a tensioner here. There's a tensioner on either side of the belt because this belt drives in both directions. So the feeder reverser is down here on the header jack shaft, and so if you end up using the the feeder reverser, it drives this belt backwards. So if it didn't have the second tensioner, it would just slip. So there's something there too, that if these aren't adjusted correctly, the belt may slip if you're using the reverser. Now, staying with this theme of the reverser and how the belts and chains are set up, I have been asked several times why this chain is put together incorrectly. That's usually what the question gets asked. It's not incorrect, and what's going on here is that if you were to run the chain over top of the idler sprocket like we normally would with any chain, what would happen here is when you put the header into reverse, it would just take that tensioner and push it off because you're going to be pulling on the slack side. So then as soon as you use it in reverse, the chain will be slack. You'd have to come back out here and readjust the tension on that. By putting it on here this way, it maintains that tension on the chain. Okay, so that's why that is put together the way that it is. Speaking of the reverser itself, it's on the jack shaft, it's inside underneath the feeder house. The only way to get to it is we'd have to get on our hands and knees and crawl underneath there and see it. But the point I want to make is that there's 350-hour grease nip services here. Personally, I would like to see that greased a little bit more than once every 50 hours.
Yeah, that is not enough.
50 hours is not enough. There isn't anything in there we can hurt with a grease gun. There's no seals that we're going to hurt or anything like that. I would actually like to see that treated as a daily. And then when you're done greasing it, you need to engage it and run it. By running it, what happens is you actually take, there's a collar in there with some square cut gears on it. There's two jaws that need to engage into each other. And that collar needs to slide back and forth on a spline on the shaft. And that spline is exposed and there's grease on it and it's underneath the feeder there. So it can be in kind of a dirty environment. By engaging it, you move that grease around on the spline and keep it free and keep it moving and keep it from seizing up. What'll happen is generally you get running your straight cut head for a number of days and you don't use it. And what can happen is it can get
That's when it gets
dirty.
material built up on it. And once you get the material built up and the gauge, and then once again, if those jaws don't engage fully and they get, you know, halfway through that first time, it probably will reverse. The next time through, it's going to slip. Once that slips the first time when you round off those edges, because those teeth are only this wide, it doesn't matter how hard you try and push them together. If you're stuck or when your feeder house stops, it is not going to back up. It is just going to skip over. It'll still drive forward fine, but it won't reverse, and it's reversing where you got to have it. So what we're trying to say is if you don't grease it, which we still recommend greasing it on a daily basis, at least run it. Run it every day, twice a day. If you're sitting waiting for the grain cart or whatever, run your reverser. Just keep those splines free on that gear. Can't stress that enough because 90% of the calls that we get with those stripped off, the guys will say, well, I haven't used it for 4 or 5 days. I haven't used it all week, and now I go to use it, it doesn't work. And that's why. It's because it hasn't been used. You have to keep using it. You've got to keep those jaws moving and free. And grease is the best way to keep any material built that builds up, keep it washed out of there.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to the feeder chain itself. The tensioning system is on either side of the feeder house here. We've got this spring with this gauge on it here. You tighten the nut down to keep the spring in line with the gauge. You do this on either side of the feeder house. Now as the chain wears, you keep adjusting that to keep the tension on it. But as it wears and you keep adjusting that, this distance in here, this on the back side here will start to close down. Now on these machines here, there's a sleeve on here. And that sleeve is your indicator of when it's time to pull a half link out. Not all machines have this, but recently most of them have.
Yep.
You don't have to wait till you get all the way to it to take the link out. Once you start getting close to it, there'll be enough wear in the chain that you'll be able to replace it.
You'll hook it back up for a half link.
Pull the half link out, sorry. If you do get all the way to the point where you've closed that up and you're right down on that sleeve, you can tighten this nut up all you want. You're still going to have a loose chain because that sleeve is preventing it from getting any tighter. Okay? Now that's the same story for either side.
And the gauge gives you a really good indicator of your chain tension. We used to go by how far the slats were off the ground and all stuff like that. Well, now there's an indicator so you can keep things even, and the springs will be pretty darn close.
Yeah. The other thing with the chain itself is bent feeder slats. Now, if you're in rocky land and you know you're having to open up the stone trap on a regular basis, chances are there's probably some damage to a slat or two in there. Or if you know that there's been rocks in there, there's a good chance that you may have to make sure you're looking for them. Now, this is a good chance to run the reverser too. If you have a second person, take the header off. Just have somebody stand at the front and watch the chain, and you can just have somebody sit there with the reverser on and just back the chain around and just watch it. If you see bent slats, stop and deal with them. Take them out and replace them, straighten them, whatever you need to do. If you don't have the ability to straighten or replace, take them out and just run without them. If there's only one or two in there that are bent, just get them out. The chain will still feed just fine with one or two missing. If you continue to run a chain with bent slats, the bent slat, what it does is it pulls sideways, kind of twists the chain over sideways, if you will. It creates a point where it'll wear faster. If left there long enough, I pretty much guarantee you when that chain fails, it's going to fail right there where that bent slat was. And that's why. So it's an expensive chain. Let's take care of it. It'll take care of you if you take care of it. So.
Yeah, sprockets, everything, they just wear that much faster with bent slats. So
Yep.
Pull them out and deal with them.
Yep. Okay. The front drum itself is adjustable. We've got this spring on here. First of all, the spring is on either side, and that spring, its job is to hold the front drum down so it isn't floating around in there. Keeps it down, keeps the chain engaged in the crop. Now you can set the height of the drum by this goofy shaped block underneath here. It's got numbers cast in it. It's actually just got the odd numbers cast in it, 1, 3, 5, 7, that sort of thing, but it actually has 8 positions on it. The recommended setting for that is actually with the crop settings in the book or in that app that we talked about earlier. Set it by the crop that you're harvesting. For the most part, I think for most of the crops we do, it'll be at 2 or 3.
And that's pretty much where it stays. Most guys don't even move it.
Yeah. Now this year, with a shorter crop,
Who's gonna know? Yeah.
who knows, we may end up having to drop it down just to make sure that chain stays engaged with the crop and keep it moving. Okay. There is this rubber puck on top here and then this one in here. Those need to be maintained to make sure they're in good condition, especially if you have the ASP feeder house. And with the both feeder houses, you have to make sure that these springs are actually there. They are known to break and fall off. So
If you don't have that ASP, with the ASP feeder house, if you don't have that spring on there, there's nothing holding that drum down. So if you've got product that's lifting the drum off the ground, rocks can sneak through. Because it is designed that the drum is closed in, so it's designed to drive those rocks down against the soundboard, trip it, and then shut off the feeder house. This system is designed to get the rocks up to the stone trap, where it kicks it into the well, and then that's what you got to empty out. So you got to make sure. And that's another thing. If you are adjusting that stop so it's higher up off the ground, especially with an ASP, just remember that you are going to decrease your stone protection by doing that. To DSP, it isn't going to make any difference because the stone is still going to travel up through and get to the beater at the back and get knocked out.
the last thing I wanted to mention while we were here is the faceplate angle is adjustable. Now on this feeder house, it's a manual adjustment. We have an indicator right here. And we've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bolts per side. So there's 8 on this side, 8 on the other. They just have to be loosened off. And then there is a draw bolt on either side, and we can change this angle here. Now what does that angle do? Can anybody tell me? By changing that, what happens? We're changing our guard angle on our header, right? Okay, so you do have that adjustment here if you don't have that adjustment in your draper heads. A lot of draper heads now actually have it.
That kind of those types of headers, you're going to need to adjust your faceplate angle.
You may need to adjust this to get the angle you're looking for. So that's how you would do it. Make sure the head is off the combine when you're doing it. Then just once you've got it to where you need to be, then you can just tighten all the bolts back up again. There is a feature that is a factory option that we can go with a power adjust on the cab, and you would see a cylinder sitting in here on either side of the feeder house, and you have that adjustment from the cab then. And the reason for that is by putting that adjustment here on the feeder house, it makes it so we don't have to have it on our draper headers or on any other header that may offer that.
Yeah.
But we're taking that option from the header and putting it on the combine, and then you have it for all headers.
The only issue with that is the FD1s, because this plate is then higher. There's a contact point between the back of the reel drive and the adjuster or the hydraulic cylinder there, so it will not actually sit down in the cradle correctly. You'll have to get a weldment. CNH supplies the weldment that has a cutout in here so that the MacDon header will sit in. And that's the only header we have an issue with. So just be aware of that. If you're going to an FD1 and you've got that, you're going to have to get that welded that weldment put in, because there's no way that you can make your header sit in there properly without.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to beat this up. I'm going to come over here to the hookups. These bolts here are all adjustable. So if you're going from your pickup head to your drape head, then you're going to have to likely adjust where this arm sits, because the lock on your pickup header or your draper header hooks on the bottom of here. So with that hooking on here, you have to make sure that this stays tight and your pin is actually sitting in this cradle. If it's halfway out or just catching on the end, if you hit something hard enough, it's going to bounce that header off and you're going to do some damage. I have had on some of the New Holland heads, this crown here was a little bit too steep, and I actually had to grind this off so I could get that to go fully in and engage. So just keep an eye on that lock pin, that it's sitting right properly in that cradle, and both sides. So one side may be latching, the other side not. You got to make sure they're both latching. And something else, a little trick that may save you some money, is when you're hooking up, just take your electrical, run it through this handle, hook it up into place. That way when you go to unhook, you unhook it, you drop that back. Oh, okay, my electrical is still done up. You unhook it and you're not going to tear it off, because usually when this happens, oh crap, I've got a rock stuck in my feeder house, or my feeder house is plugged, or something has happened, and you're panicking, and you're trying to get ahead of things, and you rip this away, back away, you wreck this. CNH does supply this separately. It's just the hours that you're down, because you're trying to rematch the wires again and replumb it.
I suppose they're all white or something.
No, they're color coded.
Oh, okay.
But you're going to have to talk real nice to the service department to get a breakout so that you know how to hook that back up again.
And you'll probably need the connector too, because when those pins get pulled out of there, it breaks all the little tangs inside. And the pins, you can shove them back in, but they won't stay. They won't lock in.
And then your circuits are screwing off.
Yeah. You'll need a new connector most likely.
It'll ruin your day. A bad day will get even worse.
Yeah.
I never do. I've never ran into that. Yeah, no, I've never heard of anybody damaging the CCMs or UCMs or anything by hooking up. So I don't know why, but stranger things have happened. This is one of John's pet peeves, so I'll let him talk about this. But there's the water
again.
There's
the water, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's where I'm going to go with
That's
this.
where he's going with this.
Hot summer day and we got water right on. Okay. So this is the hydraulic hookup for the header. You put it in, and then there's a handle on there with a little red button that pops out. You should just snap right in with one hand. Nice, easy motion. Should lock it in. Now, if you get to about 2/3, 3/4 of the way in, it starts getting tight. Stop. Don't keep forcing
Don't
on
force
it.
it.
If you force it in, and I'm sure there's lots of us here that have done it, and I'm guilty of it too, get your knee into it and really crank on that thing. Come on, you get in there. What's going on is something's under pressure. Now, inside these couplers, there's little Teflon seals in there, and they are not a lot of fun to replace. In fact, in a lot of cases, it's probably just as easy to just replace the coupler itself.
Yep.
But either way, you've got a leak now and something you need to fix that you maybe can be avoided here. Most likely, where the problem is not on this side. It's probably not the combine side. Most likely, it's probably the header side. If you come up to the header, like say a draper header or any kind of a header that has a reel on it, and you see one end of the reel up in the air, there's a good chance there's a lot of pressure in there. And the reel circuit is actually the middle one. Probably should be looking for a spot on the header to relieve the pressure before you start forcing on this. Okay? Or you might be changing seals in here, so, all right?
Or changing the complete coupler.
Or changing the whole, depending on how much damage you do. If you push hard enough on it, you can break anything.
I gotta try that.
That's not covered under warranty either, by the way.
Dennis, your name should be under job security for these guys.
I thought it was under destruction.
It's funny, I actually had, it was one of the other Robertson's clinics that we were doing. It might have been one in Moose Jaw. While most of the crowd was doing the walk around outside on the grain cart, there was one customer that came to me and he said, he keeps having to change those couplers in it. I said, it's funny, this is going to be brought up on the walk around. And I said, this is what's going on. And we walked over to the head and I explained to him what I just explained to you guys. And he goes, okay. And he says, yeah, that makes sense. So.
Reel all the way in and down.
Yes, that is a good rule of thumb when you're dropping your header
Taking
off,
it
is
off.
make sure you put the reel down and in. Same with your pickup head, make sure the wind guard is down. Just take all the pressure out of the circuit. Now, leaving it out here with the sun shining on it, you're going to have thermal expansion in the lines. It's just the way it is. But it'll be even worse if you leave the reel in the air.
Can you bypass, like if you just have the key on and try plugging in, or on the combine side and hit the buttons, will it release?
Well, like I said, this side is probably not the problem.
Right.
And until this couples up, even if we could do that, that's not going to really help anything. It's the coupler on the header that's probably going to get damaged. I just hold this. I hold this one just for the sake of the conversation.
Close your eyes.
Okay, and something pulling the combines out of the shed for the first time after sitting all winter. First thing I want you to do is to get yourself your socket extension, nice little support out here, and actually physically try and break these bolts. They come with, they come torqued, and each one has a mark on them so that we know that the guys here have torqued it. And not everybody has a 1,000-foot torque wrench or something like that. So if you take that bar and a 4 or 5 foot snipe, and I probably wouldn't have to use all my weight, but if you put 200 and some odd pounds on there plus, and you pull down, you will get to that 1,000 foot-pounds of torque-ish. And the thing is here, if you can move it, it's loose. Or if it's halfway broken through. You know, you big headers, and they can be half broken through. They'll be, you know, you look at them, you touch them, everything's fine. But you put a good torque on them, and that's when they'll snap. So when we're doing our inspections every winter, that's something the guys are doing. They're putting a torque wrench on those wheels, and they're torquing them. And we find a lot that actually have cracked. Once you've got one bolt that is actually snapped or partially cracked through, that bolt is not doing its job. Then it is putting that much extra strain on the rest of the bolts. So I can't stress that enough, guys. Check your bolts every year. Here, when we do our pre-delivery, guys always take the paint off the inside between the duals. And that is basically taking up about 1/16 of an inch because these are powder coated. So they're about a 1/16 of an inch of paint, and you got 2/16, or you get, you get enough surfaces.
three
3/16.
Three surfaces.
Yeah, so you got that. That's a lot of wear to take place. Yes.
Is the smaller nuts still 550?
Good question. It'll tell me.
If you do that with those ones, you're going to turn those.
Oh, these ones here.
The inside ones.
Generally, the torque.
Generally
The torque is going to be in the operator's manual. Now, this combine is going to be one way. There's going to be lots of different machines out there that are going to have different setups. What I would recommend is follow the instructions that are with your combine and your operator's manual, because just because this one's 750 or 1,000, whichever one it is, your machine might only be 580 because some of them were a little bit lower. And some of them were 1,000, some were 750. Basically, the message is this:
depending on where it was.
Check your operator's manual or check your tires of what it's supposed to be, and check them, please.
And if you got a 4-foot snipe, like I said, you shouldn't be able to move them or move them very easily.
It is a two-person job because you'll need one person to hold the extension.
Hold the other extension, or unless you got a bracket that they can sit in to move around with different heights on it. The thing is, we do what we can to make sure that we don't crack or fail these rims, or that we don't crack or fail the bolts. So we try and help out, but you guys have to keep checking these. And every spring, when you pull this thing out of the shed, be checking those, unless you bring it in for an inspection, which it should have been checked before it gets to you. If you see little brown lines anywhere along there, that rim is cracked, and you can't just weld them up and go. That rim should be replaced because it is going to fail. You've got 400 and some bushels. You've got a 8,500 pound header out front and a 40-some thousand pound combine. That's a lot of weight, a lot of stress on these duals. You go through water runs, you climb ditches, you spin going up hills. That is all going to take its toll.
Spin through mud.
Yeah, that's all going to take its toll.
Well, not this year,
on
but
this system. Yeah, hopefully somewhere.
I wish.
No kidding.
Okay, I'm nervous already. So guys, this is the chains that we talk about for the unloading auger. This one here, we still have a gearbox in the bottom for your unloading auger. This system is, the seal that's in there is actually designed to hold oil in and a little bit of grease out. And this side of the hopper is sealed very, very well. Oh, I did get a bath historically. So this is dry. And so if your combine sits outside, you want to make sure that this little cover here on the bottom is actually open, and put bolts in, because these nuts tend to seize. So that will keep it drained on the bottom. So as it freezes and thaws, you're not going to push water into this gearbox. You've seen it quite a few times where the oil coming out of here is water. There is no oil left in it. Another spot that gets neglected that is really not fun to work on is the elbow. There is a gearbox up on the elbow on the feeder, on the unloading auger. And that one, Tyler, how do you change the oil in there?
That's fun.
Yeah, you have to you got to suck them out. There's no drain. So, and it is very important to get that initial oil change on these gearboxes, because it is not a pressure lube system. So anything that is in that system stays in the system. So any filings, any machining processes that are in there continue floating in there until you guys change the oil in here. So make sure that you service that and change those. Next thing, I'll give that back to you. We've had a few discussions on filler plates, and one of the things that I like to go through with everybody is, as I said, filler plates are a last resort. and not something you want to use unless you have to. This year it might be an exception to my rule, but Holland has them set parallel. So parallel concaves means front, the back, the side, the clearance is always the same. Historically, we've had issues with overloading the center of the grain pan, and actually have a hump plate built in here because all of your easy threshing is done in the first this much of your concave. New Holland has realized that there's issues. What they've done is they've changed the shimming process. These rub bars on these twin pitch rotors are no longer shimmed. And as you are installing them, the contact points vary throughout the whole header, trying to give pinch points and change pinch points so it spreads the grain pan or the spread across the grain pan. You still may have some situations, and I ran into this last year, where when I do a kill stall, I couldn't get the sample clean. And I thought, what's going on? So I did a kill stall. The material had actually built up and it was sitting, touching the concaves in the middle. So I was overloading, and that's even with the hump pan in there. So the material was actually touching the concaves in the middle. The outsides of the grain pan, about this far back, had about that much product. So how effective do you think your fan and your sieve is going to be if you're overloading the center like that? So in that situation, what I did, moved the and the concave extensions, the concave extensions were in. This was in spring wheat. They were in. So you move, I loosen off the bolts on the top, and I moved the concaves in about 1/8 of an inch on either side evenly again, and did another kill stall, and it helped spread the because your easy threshing was still done in the middle, but your harder threshing, because it wasn't spread out, was actually moved out to the outside. So it did give an evener spread across the grain pan, give your concaves, your sieves a chance to do their job. And some of the older units with the S-cubed rotors, I've actually moved up to 1/4 of an inch. But you got to remember, when you are changing your concave settings, you're having to reset the concave clearance. So the zero, and I believe in zero being a true zero, not a 1/4 inch or I want them actually ticking. So if you can bring that a little bit more to the outside, it spreads the material out across the grain pan. If you can get it out and do it the first time without having to run a bunch of returns and throw that all back in, because that all goes to the middle again, on the back, on top of the sieves, right? You're not going to do any more damage because your returns, all the work is done on the bottom. But at the same time, you are asking your sieves to do that much more, and you're not getting it out. So by moving those in, that is something that I've done in the past, and older combines, that was pretty much a must. And that's how I got away from filler plates. I've had to use filler plates once, maybe twice in the 30 years that I've been working on these combines. And that's how I got away without having to do that. So if you're having an issue, have a look at things, do a kill stall and actually look in there and see what's going on. Because if it's something that you can change instead of making your combine smaller, and this year it might be an exception, because you're not going to, I don't think you'll be able to run your combine at 90 to 100% load in most crops. Hopefully it is in some look for you, some of you guys, but unless you're in irrigation, I don't think that's going to happen. So I would play with my rotor vanes. So slow them down, slow the rotors down, get my ground speed up. Try and get that engine load up to that 85 to 90 to 95%. Keep these things full, they will do a better job. Two settings. Everybody knows the two settings on the concaves that we kind of a rule of thumb is on the inner hole, and that's these holes here. The inner hole is for your cereals, and the outer hole are for your pulses. Peas are another thing. I don't usually pull wires. I once again open the concaves to the outer settings, drop them down. When you're doing peas, the concaves, they may not fit through those wires. Actually, peas this year are fitting through, but if they're not fitting through, all that does is you lose about 2 ice cream pails full of peas that lay in the concaves, and then your peas will go right through. There's lots of space out here that they'll come out because there's very little trash on peas ever. So you're not going to get any damage because you slowed your rotor down, opened up your concaves, and it comes through without pulling wires. And I discovered that you don't need to pull wires a few years ago. I was out at a customer's yard, and we were doing peas, and he had 0 dockage. So I wanted to have a look and see what was going on. I couldn't see through the concaves. They were plugged with mud. And they kept going. Life was good. And that's how I got away with that's how I realized we don't actually need to pull wires on concaves. Even doing chickpeas. Kabuli chickpeas, you can run those through, and that's a 25 to 35 bushel crop. Run them through without any splits, without any damages.
Where I saw it, Tim, was basically it was the same thing where I was at a place a number of years ago, and they were getting ready to go into their wheat. They pulled the sides off, doing exactly what most people do, just going to wheat, putting the awning plates in, right?
Yep.
Went to go put his awning plates in, pulled the sides off the concave, or off the combine to get into the concaves, took one look in there and realized he did all his peas with his awning plates in, and had 0 dockage on his peas.
Yep.
He forgot that he'd left them in there from the end of last year and didn't even look in there, just went straight into his peas, not even realizing how his concaves were set up.
Yeah. You can close those concaves off, and you're going to do very little damage. Yeah. These rotors, these systems work very, very good. Very gentle. You want to talk about returns?
Sure. Tailings. Let's grab a couple of these doors here.
Oh, these are the...
They're all
out.
There, yeah. Perfect. Yeah, grab me that other one too. That's the other spiked one.
Oh.
Yeah, thanks. And water.
Mm-hmm.
What's water? Okay, the tailing system, we have a dual returns system on here where we use these spiked doors. Now this is all CRs and all CXs. So we've got these doors that go in there. Now, they have been marked so that we know which one goes where, but if for some reason this gets missed and they're not marked, it can be a little bit difficult to put these in. We got to make sure we get them in the right way, because as you can see, they are a mirror image of each other. So to get them in the right way, it helps if we understand how these work. So we've got these teeth on here, and there's teeth on the drum in there, or the drum in the tailings processor. There's teeth in there, and they need to mesh, right? So we've got this area here with no teeth on this door. The way this works is the cross auger underneath the combine is going to deliver the material into this area. Now, you can take this door and walk around to the other side of the machine, and it'll pin in the other way, and then the cross auger will be trying to push here. And it's not going to hurt anything. You know, you're not going to hurt the combine because the teeth will still line up. But what will happen is it's just going to plug really easy. So that's if you just went into your wheat and you just put these in and you're finding your tailings is plugging really easy, that's the first thing I would do, is just make sure we got the doors in the right way. Okay? Having them marked like this should just eliminate that altogether, and it should make it easy to put in. So, okay, once these are installed, there is a clearance adjustment with these. Now, the teeth on the drum are in there all the time, and they live through your peas, your lentils, the canola, the dirt, everything else that goes through, the dirt, rocks, whatever else that goes through these things, and they do wear. This can be readjusted to accommodate to take up this from that wear. Once this is installed, these bolts here on the ends are actually on a slot. If you just loosen these bolts off, you can take this thing and you can slide it in and out, and to get the clearance adjustment you're looking for. Now the fingers on the drum that are on here, you want to adjust the clearance of them to this concave, and it should be about 3/16 of an inch, so fairly tight. Now that is something that may be a big one for us this year, especially with wheat.
Yep.
If we're chasing white caps. Now I'm a big fan of trying to do whatever I can in the rotor, but sometimes, and this may be one of those years where this is going to become essential to just finish cleaning
Yep.
up our sample. And this could be a critical adjustment for us. Okay, so once you're done making that adjustment, just lock down the bolts. To make it, there's a little window on the side there where it's a 10 millimeter wrench. Opens up those little unpainted doors there, and you can go in there and you can see the teeth and you can measure it to this concave. Once you're done, make sure you remember to close those up. Wheat pours out of those holes, so it's a and it is something that gets forgot about sometimes. There's 4 of them total. There's 2 per side. Just make sure they're closed. Okay, once you've got that adjusted in there, there is one other adjustment on here, and it's this L bracket on the back side. These are actually on a slotted hole too. So if you loosen these bolts off, this L bracket can slide in and out. What that L bracket is doing is it's capturing the wall of the tailings processor and holding it in tight against this concave. That may help with grain leaks around these things. That adjustment on this bracket can also be made to the smooth door too. So when these are in for canola, make sure that these are adjusted correctly. It may help with grain leaks around these things. And then, of course, you may have to apply duct tape or silicone as needed to seal them up. But I would check this first before you.
I've seen those side supports so far out of adjustment. The peas are actually leaking out, and not that you'd ever have returns on peas, but I've seen it. Things are that bad.
Yeah, so it can happen. So there is that adjustment there too. Okay. Now with the tailing system, after we're done down there, there's an auger that just augers everything up to the top, and then there's 2 paddles at the top that flip everything on the grain pan. And at the top there is an access door, and Tim's going to show you this one here.
We like to put chains on this door because this door is kind of in a little cage, and if it fails, or these hinges, because I've seen these get pretty loose because these aren't that heavy hinges, right? So this door gets kind of loose, and if it comes off or fails in any way, that falls directly down into your fan. So, or if you're having a look and you unlatch this, things aren't stopped yet, they're just slowing down, and you snap this and unlatch it, and that it falls or you lose it, then you're looking for a loaner combine or something, because it's going to do some damage. Because you also want to make sure once this is in there that every once in a while, they just take a hammer and just tap these latches so that it puts added stress, helps this seal. Because as you put little rocks and things like that through, this cover, it's going to balloon, especially if you're doing a lot of pulse crops. It isn't quite as bad in the northern areas, but in the south, these get swollen up pretty bad, and they don't sit and they don't seal in here very well. Second thing is your hairpin. Always put it in from the top down, because as they get loose and as they lose their spring tension, gravity is going to help them fall out, and then you lose another form of protection, so this cap can come off and go down into your fan once again.
the biggest thing is to tie those things up.
Tie them up
Tie 'em
somehow.
up.
Whether you use a chain, whether you use a couple of the heavy-duty black tie straps, zip ties, and put a couple of them in there. Just you want to make sure you can still get it out of the way, but and get it off, but make sure that it has something there to as a support. Another thing that I've found is, you know, every spring tensioner has a gauge on it. This belt here, this is the main drive for the whole combine. And I've found that your rotors seem like they are doing good. They're not really noticeably slipping or slowing down, but the combine just isn't performing. Come out and just put your hand, go do, run it for 20 minutes, go up the half mile and back again, put your hand on here and run it at 90% or as close to it as you can. If this pulley is hot, come over to your adjuster and give that 2 turns. Don't go a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch, just go a couple of turns, go make another pass or 2, check it again. It should cool down. But this, because all your drive goes through here, it needs to be tight, but not over tight. And the reason I tell you don't just tighten the heck out of everything on this one, if you over torque it, you're going to start failing these bearings. Because that idler isn't designed to handle that much pressure. It's designed to keep things tight and run. But so you want to run this belt just so that it is not slipping. And if this pulley is cool, it's not slipping.
And when we say hot, we mean hot enough you can't touch it.
I mean, you're going to go
Or
like
it's
this.
burning
You're
the
going to go,
paint off it.
holy crap. You know,
If it's burning the paint off it, it's slipping.
If you can't go 3 steamboats, it is too hot. Because you should be able to go 1001, 1002, 1003. Yep, that's warm. If you can't do that, it's slipping. So it'd be easy to just crank on that nut and then not worry about it. But that, like I said, that's going to fail those bearings, and then you are sitting. Because that, I've seen this make at least a 1/2 mile-an-hour difference to the operation of a combine. And your sample will get dirty. It'll change in midstream just because everything is slowing down just that little bit. Batteries?
Sure. The battery box, as you can see, because we've had the monitor out of it all day and we've had the key on, we've got the battery charger on here. As you can see, we're hooked up to the top battery here. Now, somebody went and reinstalled this belt, but this belt does have to come off to get into the batteries. It's not hard to get off because there is a quick release on it. You just need a 3/4 inch wrench or a crescent. And you just give that a quick turn, the belt pops off, and there's just a handful of rubber straps on a plastic cover and it pops right out. You can get into the batteries in under a minute.
One of the first comments the guys had this morning, Ryan looked at me this morning and was hooking up the charger. He said, oh crap, they moved the boosting posts. Yeah, and this is why.
There used to be boosting posts on the back side of the battery that you could access just by reaching. You didn't even have to open everything up. You could just reach in behind here and just hook onto them. They've eliminated all that. All you're going to find back there now is the disconnect switch. We actually want you to get right on the battery now. The main reason for that is we want the batteries to vent properly to the atmosphere, especially when we're charging them. The older series of combines that had the steel boxes that had they were a bugger to get into the batteries. They were buried in there. They didn't vent properly. So you can just imagine a dead battery with a heavy boost to it and not being able to vent. It doesn't usually go well sometimes. That's exactly what will happen. Yep. They'll go kaboom. So to eliminate that, we want the batteries out in the open when you're charging. Okay. There is a nice seal on here. There's weather stripping on here. It seals up. It does stay clean in here. There will be a little bit of debris sitting up here. There generally is a little bit caught up here, but all you got to do is just make sure you brush that off before you take the cover off, and the batteries will stay relatively clean. you get a little bit of chaff in there, but they will stay dry and clean in there. Now there is a fuse panel in here too. There is a couple of fuses and some relays in here, and the chart is right here on the door. So if you need to go in there, you know what you're looking for before you go. If you know you're looking for the start fuse, it's actually here. The rest of the fuses are all in the cab, so. But there is a few of them down here, so.
And are these 24 volt boxes?
No, that's
Yes,
the other thing
that
that
is the
changed
beauty.
here too. If you look in here, there's a great big giant relay in here that used to be on the 9070s actually. And it hasn't been there since then. But it's back on here now, and all that relay does is put the batteries into series for starting. So it gives the 24 volts we need to the starter, but that's it. That's all there is. The rest of the combine is purely 12 volts.
Yeah,
So now the alternator is actually charging both batteries
both
fully.
batteries. Instead of relying on that little charger that was up underneath the hopper that charged the bottom battery. So you had to switch batteries year to year. We recommend switching batteries from year to year. So the DEF system is no longer 24 volts, it is 12. And so the only thing that's 24 volts is start, and that's where that relay comes in. So, yes, it's not really a fuse, it's a strip. It's a, yeah. It can burn out, yes.
Yep.
We had that happen on our four-wheel drive.
Yep.
Drove the yard, shut it off, went to start it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's those fuses that are about that long in there, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there will be those in there. Yeah. Okay, that's
Okay.
really all I had on the batteries. So
That's it. Really nothing else here. When you're dropping straw, you guys know that there's a disconnect here. You don't have to take the cover off, drop the belts, anything like that. There's a quick disconnect right up there. Unlatch it. Drop your, drop, oh, this is that, okay. Then just drop your back end down, gets at your PSD, and you can drop your straw so you can either gather a sample or baling, whatever you're doing. This is the electric one. Where's the switch?
what's that?
Where's the switch? Should push the switch.
To put it to drop?
Yeah.
Yep. I'll just hit it here. Is everybody clear?
With the key switch on, it should beep and then drop down.
It'll do this from the cab too.
Yep. And you can see the PSD canvas and stuff in the back. Somebody was asking about this before, that they couldn't get it to operate. You shouldn't have to have anything run but the key on, and then the switch should activate in the back. Dropping the chaff spreaders down. The older units actually had a valve on the side. You could turn that valve down and actually shut them off. The new series, you cannot slow those down below 2 or 250.
Something like that. One of those two. I can't remember.
Somewhere
I
in
want to say
there.
it's 200.
I think it's 200, yep. And we find when you're dropping a grain pan, a drop pan, that this actually works good with them running on 200. If you try and disconnect, you'll plug up the back end because the spreaders and the PSD canvas are hooked together. So you have to build a loop hose so the PSD canvas continues turning, or just let everything run like this. I'm finding that there isn't much difference between the two when you do your samples, if any, when you drop your pans. So but that's the key thing, is it's got quick couplers on it, but you've got to make sure that you build a loop hose and loop that back together so the oil can flow. DEF, we've got the spout down here, everybody's favorite DEF. That still, I recommend draining it every fall before you put it away, and then fill it back up in the spring, and it should work. The multi-use
I'm
handle.
going to talk about everybody's favorite wrench now.
That's for the hired man.
So this wrench, as we have discovered, has multiple uses.
Many uses.
The first use for this is actually for the DFR. If you don't have a reverser on your DFR, this is your D-slug wrench. It will slip in beside the duals, and you have a wrench to be able to move it and rock it with. The second use for it that Tim likes to use it for is a snipe. You can use it as a snipe on the
Concave.
On the concave.
You're putting the concaves up. It even standing on the ground, you pull down on the handle, and you can latch the locks and save your back a little bit.
We actually had a customer here earlier, I think it was last week, said to me, he goes, this end here actually works pretty good to straighten guards on his knife. So he was using it as a snipe for a straightening tool.
Yep. Yeah. So there you there. And then
What other than
I think that was
beating
it for,
people over the head with it?
if you don't listen. Right?
Yeah. It is actually part of the D-slug system for the rotors too. There is a socket strapped to the return auger on this side. Now inside there is a pipe. The pipe would go in first.
So it doesn't fall off on your head.
Yeah, the pipe is there to support the socket. Then you put the socket on, and then the wrench goes on the socket. Can I see the socket for a second there, Tim? Now, I did have a question earlier, and I forget who it was that asked me this, about the fit there. But how that is loose, and actually that has a taper on it. It is by design. It is designed this way for a reason. We want the wrench to actually come off easy, because if you put all this up there and have the wrench hanging on there, and somebody starts the thresher up, it would be nice if this would fall off.
Nobody's ever in a panic when they plug their
You can just
combine.
imagine the mess that would happen if that didn't fall off. So it is by design. Okay. Now, speaking of plugging and using that wrench, let's assume for a second we actually just plug this combine. Now, we need to know a couple of things first. We have a DFR in the front, and like I said at the beginning, it runs with the rotors. So when we engage the rotors, that is trying to spin as well. The software in the combine is watching the DFR and the rotors at the same time and is watching it for plugs. So if it senses a drastic drop in speed on either one, it'll shut the thresher off in the field. Thinking that if it senses that there's something bad about to happen, and if it shuts it down, rather than waiting for the engine to stall, we might prevent it from getting too far into the combine, and it should be easier to deal with. Now, this has just happened, let's say for example. What do we need to do? Well, the first thing we need to do is make sure that the DFR isn't plugged. And that's easy enough to deal with on this combine because we have a reverser on it. So we can just run that through its procedure and make sure that the DFR and the feeder house are clear. And they can do that one just sitting in the cab having a cup of coffee while I cool down and
Just
quit swearing at the combine and
wait
and
for the hired man to come.
Yeah, and kind of catch my breath and go, oh darn, okay, now I'm plugged. Let that thing do its procedure. Then I would get out and make sure that maybe that's all it was. I've seen situations where that is all it was. You can just fire up and go at that point. Now, it may have gotten into the rotors, and we may have to deal with the rotors now, but at least we know the front end is clear. I want to make sure that the back end is clear. So before I get out of the cab, what I would do is I will drop the concaves all the way down, as low as I can. I'm going to get out, I'm going to come back here, and I can do a visual inspection up in there and see if the beater is plugged, and just make sure that it's moving. And a quick and easy way to do that is, if I go up here, I can move the rotor into neutral, pull them out of high, put them into neutral, I can put the slug wrench on the rotors and start turning the combine backwards, and then I can just watch the belts. And if I see the beater moving without a whole lot of effort, well, it's probably a pretty good guess that it's not restricted. Then what I would do is pull the rotors into low speed and start pulling backwards on the wrench. Try and get as much as you can backwards. And I think backwards is going this way,
Yep.
but not, yeah. If you can get a half a turn out of it, that should be pretty good. Take the wrench off, and now I want you to go and do a hard start. Can anybody tell me how to do a hard start? So a hard start, and it tells you in the operator's manual how to do this. So this isn't a secret. We're not hiding this from you. Yeah, you hold the throttle increase, and then while holding it, engage the thresher. What'll happen is on a normal setup, or pardon me, on a normal startup, there's modulation into the clutch, and it just kind of gradually gets everything going. Well, there's no modulation with this. It just puts full pressure to the clutch. So it revs the engine to 1800. Full throttle's 21, so it doesn't quite go full throttle. And it just engages the clutch. And it'll hold it there till the motor stalls. If the engine stalls at all. If it doesn't, well, then you win. Then you win. You got it. It'll put the slug through. Once it clears itself out, you can shut it down, come back out here, put all your stuff away, put the rotors back into high, carry on.
You wouldn't put it in neutral and run the beater? Because the beater turns, doesn't it, in neutral?
If you do that, the DFR tries to run. And the DFR trying to run with the rotors off. So
it will actually kick everything out.
With some of the older ASP machines, yes, you can kind of get away with that. I'm kind of trying to steer everybody away from that practice now.
Okay.
Just trying to have one message for everybody, sort of thing. Yeah. I would actually rather, if I'm looking at the beater, I'd almost rather just take the couple minutes and just do it.
Have a quick look, visual.
Yeah, just do it by hand.
Yep.
Okay, so you do a hard start. If it goes all to the point where the engine stalls, I would restart the engine, come back out here, put the wrench on, back it up again. But this time you should be able to back it up further than it was the first time. And then I would try and do a hard start a second time. That should get her out. Usually on 2 goes, it's moving. Okay, once it's cleared out, like I say, put everything back the way it was and you're off and running. So now, sometimes it's not what you took in the front or something you did as an operator that plugged the combine. We need to go back to some of the discussions we had here this morning about canola leakage. Because a lot of the leaks actually do tend to happen on this side of the combine. The elevators here, we talked a lot about that. The bubble up auger, the grain tank. Everything always seems to happen right here. And what else is right here? The rotor drive. So if you come out here and you see that belt looks like somebody took a grease gun to it, and you see canola laying all over around in here, it's not necessarily the combine's fault that it got plugged. There's something else going on here. We need to figure out why it happened and correct it, and then you can carry on. Okay? Okay, I think we've pretty much beat that to death.
Yep.
The grain elevator. Now, I'd mentioned before, we have this larger housing on here to accommodate the camera for the automation. The camera is actually just a couple of pins. I'm just going to pull the one. It's easy to pull this one here, and then the camera is actually this guy right in here. And if you just kind of poke your face in there, you can kind of see the lens of the camera. There is going to be the odd time, and I kind of talked about this morning, where it's going to come up and say that the grain camera is dirty. Now, there's a couple of things that might cause that. One could be static. One could be just green material just building up on it. I've heard of both scenarios. The only one I've ever actually witnessed is the static one, where it's just dust. If that is the case with the static, wiping it with a rag isn't going to fix it. You'll be back out here in about 10 minutes doing it again, is my experience with that. Blowing it off tends to be a little bit better. And what I've been recommending is just go to Staples and get those keyboard dusters. It's supposed to be an anti-static as well. I think that would be, just throw one of those in the cab with you. And you can just open this up and you can just reach in there and blow it off. Okay? If it is got some wet green material on it, just glass cleaner and a rag. Don't go any crazier than that.
Not brake clean or anything like that.
No, don't use brake clean or ether or any of those crazy things. Or gas or WD-40 or there's all kinds of. Okay.
Home remedies.
Just glass cleaner.
Is brake clean a good idea to spray on your belt?
If you got canola, yes.
Brake clean, and I would put it in a rag. I'd spray it in a rag and then I would just wipe the sides of the belt off. Ether's another one I've heard too.
Yeah, I heard ether works well too.
Will work well too.
You might not care after either.
Yeah. Use with caution and lots of ventilation. I realize this is going to the YouTube channel. There's gonna be lots of people hearing this. So disclaimers here. We don't need any lawyers on our butts after this. But yeah, wipe it down with a rag would probably be the most
the best way.
The best way, yeah.
Brake clean on a rag, wipe it down, get rid of as much as you can. And I've actually heard other guys say that they put a little bit of dirt on it to help it get sticky again, and then you can usually get it back to where it needs to. But the key is here, if you see that, pull the side shield off, run it, have a look, figure out where it's coming out, how it's getting there.
Yeah. And just to finish up with the moisture meter, this is no different than the standard one. It does have these two pins in the bottom and this auger that comes out for clean out. So that hasn't changed, just the auger's longer. There isn't the rod in the center that you got to line up. You just put it in and just twist it till it finds its home.
Yep.
It's actually easier to put this one in. Same thing. If the moisture meter stops working, meaning it just has the same value in front of you all the time and it never moves, probably this thing's jammed. Now, the camera is also looking at that sample in there. So the sample has to be moving in there for the automation to be working. So this has to run for automation. Okay? So if this, if the fuse goes on this one, there's no fuse down here anymore, like there was on the previous, on the non-automated combines.
Yep.
The fuse is actually in the cab now for this one. And I believe it's called bypass motor. Just to confuse everyone.
Yeah, nothing to do with the moisture sensor, it's bypass. And I suppose if you think about it, it's bypassing the product. So
technically that's what this is called, is the bypass auger, but
It won't tell you.
no.
Goes out.
No.
But if you're running an automation, then your automation wouldn't change either.
the automation will come up saying that it might tell you that the grain cam's dirty.
Yep.
Because what'll
It's
trigger the
not
grain
seeing
cam
any-
dirty is if it takes the same picture 3 times in a row, it'll go, hey, wait a minute, there's a problem here. So it could be this. Yeah. Yeah. So that's just something to keep in mind with both of those systems. The actual moisture meter itself is this guy here. You just take these 2 nuts off and you can pull it out, and there's a fin on there. It can get dirty with peas and mud and whatever else.
Garbage built up, yep.
Again, glass cleaner and a rag. I wouldn't go anything more drastic than that. You might do more damage to it than if you use something else. So, yeah.
Okay.
That's all
Grease
I had
interval?
for that. Oh, the grease. Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm gonna pick on your grease gun again. So on the Rotor Drive itself, we have a 50-hour interval on the torque sensor side here. There's two grease points up here. On the other side here, we have 4 grease points up there, and they're labeled as 10-hour ones. Let's treat both sides as 10s. 50's not enough here. We need to treat this as a daily service point. And just to prove my point, in the combine software, it's going to come up and tell you every 10 hours that you need to lubricate your variator. Okay?
So the software guys, they got it, but
The guys
sticker
putting the stickers on the side of the combine didn't. So let's do that one every 10 hours. How much to put in it? A couple shots. If you do it every day like we ask you to, probably a couple of shots every time would be sufficient. Then you need to run it through
the Variator lube.
what we call the Variator lube procedure,
Yeah.
which basically is speed it all the way up, slow it all the way down, and then put it back to your set speed. Run it through the speed range. You need to do that to get that grease moved around in there and get it to where it needs to be.
Just like the reverser, you gotta run it. If you don't run it, you're not doing it any good.
Yep.
I think that's it.
I think that's it.
I think we beat this per combine to death.
Unless anybody else has anything they want to talk about.
Comments or
Comments?
Rotors down at the end of the day.
That's not a bad thing to do either.
Yep.
Yeah, because if you slow the rotors down, it lets the tension off that spring and the belt. Well, the belt's
the belt stays under tension.
the belt. You're not going to hurt the belt. It's more the spring in the torque sensor. But yeah, that's a good practice, especially the older machines that had the older style
With
torque
the
sensor
rollers
on
on
there.
them.
The rollers on the backside.
If you slowed it down, it was easier to actually get at the grease points.
And there's the same thing, one or one.
1-1, but do them daily too.
Yeah, but like one or one, you'll take the seals out of them.
Yep.
Yep.
That's one of the ones that you can overgrease.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of an electric grease gun anywhere on a combine. When it comes to a combine, I'm a fan of a manual grease gun. I want to feel it.
Yep.
I say leave the electric grease gun for the air drill. The pins and bushings on your air drills.
Not the Packer bearings.
Yeah.
Okay, well, guys, we're going to gather inside. We'll do some draws. I want to thank everybody for taking the time out today. I think John was a little long on the tooth today, so but I appreciate everybody hanging out, and I hope you got something from this, and hope to working with everybody in the future. So yeah, let's go do some draws.
Yep.